Welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. I'm getting an update from Graphene Manufacturing Group, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol GMG. I am chatting again with the founder and CEO, Craig Nicol. Now, as Craig and I are doing on a more monthly basis, I am going through a number of questions that you all have emailed to me on the back of our last interview at the beginning of March. A lot of these questions are focused on the Thermal XR division as well as the battery division. Now, just to remind everybody, there is also this lubricants division that the company runs, all from the company's production of this graphene powder. Now, Craig, let's start off with the Thermal XR division. A couple of questions here. We've talked a lot about how Thermal XR is used to improve air conditioning units, the efficiency there. Have you done any testing on heat pumps? Do you have any more information on if Thermal XR can actually improve the performance of heat pumps during winter months?
Hey, Corey, great to be back on again. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so we're very interested in helping out on heat pumps. Definitely Thermal XR, we believe, will be able to support a more efficient heat pump. What we see and what we mainly focused on is doing some, and it's very early testing, we're doing testing where the defrost cycle, which is pretty much required where it's a lot of snow and a lot of ice, and you need to remove the ice around the outside part of the heat pump. We've done some anecdotal empirical testing ourselves, and it's shown that it can remove the ice faster with our Thermal XR. So therefore, the defrost cycle can be a whole lot less, energy-wise, which is a huge thing. And if you've got very cold areas where there's obviously you're snowed in or iced in. Now we've got to do more work there, and I think that's the thing with this area, these industries. You really need to come to with them with a pretty solid case and build that data. And so that's what we're doing. We're doing more work in that space as well.
Now, another question asking about if Thermal XR will be made available to residential customers who want to improve their own HVAC equipment in their homes. Is this an option for the company?
Yeah, so I think up front, we're working on distributors around in different regions around the world, and they will be able to sell it to HVAC contractors who could then, air conditioning contractors who could then supply it to people's homes. That's definitely an opportunity in the future. The other way to that channel is through providing some type of aerosol can, or so, like self-service type product. Now, we envisaged that we could get there, but we haven't done any work on that. But that is something we could do eventually, once we've gone through the larger sectors of the energy and the power sectors, which we believe is a big opportunity for TXR. Obviously, the HVAC sector through doing direct jobs and then also doing distributors around the world. But yeah, the retail sector is then obviously another area we could work on, but it will take a while for us to get there. I'd say many, many years before we get there.
Okay, so I guess it's fair to say that the focus right now being working with larger companies that could just put Thermal XR on their current products?
That's it, yeah, and their existing processes. Where you save $1 by providing someone an opportunity with Thermal XR on their equipment, but on their air conditioning systems or their heat exchange systems, but where companies can make $1, so they make more profit and also reduce their emissions by using a Thermal XR, we're finding that definitely is also another area we get a lot of requests and discussions around, and that's generally in the gas production area where the heat exchangers are literally making money for people as much as they're looking to save energy and emissions as well.
So then, Craig, another question that keeps coming in is just how close is Thermal XR to some significant sales deal? I know you can't provide us with any inside information, but what's the roadmap here to getting some significant sales for the TXR division?
Yeah, I think there's a number of areas, and I think since 6 months ago, I guess, since we took over the brand and bought the IP to blend it ourselves and then got all the approvals for the product only now 2 months ago in Australia without any constraints or conditions for the Australian government. We've now built a much broader case, I believe, in terms of markets that we're looking at targeting and talking to, and also talking and progressing through. So with distribution agreements, we've been working on them for some time, in some cases some up to 9 to 12 months in different regions around the world. And that's enabling us to kind of hopefully bringing together those distribution agreements and with more data and the approvals in the country. But what typically happens in say a country like America, we've got to make sure we have the EPA approval for our product as well before we can make sure we can distribute it through the country. So that tends to also be the bottleneck in those larger distribution deals, and they need a lot of technical data to get them across the line, because obviously they'll be representing it and selling it in a large number of locations in their region. And then there's another group, which is the direct-to-market. And those direct-to-market deals are where large companies are saying, "Look, can we work with you? How do we getting into helping your business?" And then it's around getting the decision makers and making sure they understand what our product can do, because it is something for people to get to understand. It's not a normal product by any means, a thermal XR. Being able to shift heat faster is not something you normally can do with a coating. And so that's something is through getting decision makers, getting them the data. And in some cases they do need more testing, and we go and do that testing for them in-house, or we get an external company. We're getting more heat transfer data, and we're getting more anti-corrosion data externally. And so that just builds that case around, how to make that happen in terms of, being able to bring the product to market to these larger businesses, which have potentially HVAC type outcomes. And then there's the bigger opportunity around, which we're finding is probably bigger than HVAC, is around going into these energy producing companies where their whole business is around heat transfer. And the more heat they transfer with less energy, they can really look at doing a lot bigger profitable business and with less emissions potentially as well, less energy. That's a very technical sell. All our engineers and scientists are involved in this. You've really got to convince people that we're doing some pretty amazing things for them to believe what we can do, which is this heat transfer with the coating, extra heat transfer with the coating. And so those are very detailed and very, very technical conversations, and they take all of the company's brains to be able to explain this quantum product that we have. And that's where we are with some very large companies progressing through some very detailed, what I would say, exchanges of technical information. And that's where, again, data always helps. So to build those reasons to believe on any one of those cases, it's all about data. It's all about customer outcomes, and then sharing those success stories. And so we're building a reservoir. It's on our website on graphenemg.com. We're building our reservoir around that data, around those case studies, around the different customer success stories across different sectors. Data centers, we tend to be getting some success there. Factories with cooling systems, we tend to get some success there. Obviously, large buildings with air conditioning systems, we've got success there in different countries. And the more data we have, the more people can be convinced that what we're doing is something that they want to buy in. So broad range, more applications coming, which we're doing some early testing on. Very, very interesting applications outside of just heat exchangers in industrial and commercial residential areas. And then that'll, I think, only make people's eyes broaden even wider on where thermal XR could go.
Okay, well, we'll follow up on any more news that comes out. I know a lot of people are still just waiting to see some significant sales coming out of that division. Let's move over to the battery division then. First, in our last interview, you mentioned that the company hasn't done any outbound requests for batteries or even looking for potential customers. When does it become time to start actively marketing this technology?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've never been in a marketing role for energy products where I didn't have to necessarily go and hunt people down for my product. Obviously with Thermal XR, we're heavily outbound and we do a lot of outbound campaigns now. We got our full product approvals only a couple of months ago, so we are doing that in Australia. And we have even call centers calling people up and engaging people around, if they'd like to see our salespeople around that product, which is bringing in some traction. With pouch cells, with our batteries, though, it is still very interesting where the amount of large companies and just existing battery buyers who are coming onto our website on a weekly basis. And then we obviously make sure that we're looking for strategic partners in applications that we think will fit both our battery up front and then can grow with our battery. And then just really meet our comparative advantage over existing batteries like lithium ions. And those potential companies that could buy our product to be potential partners in are still coming through. So we don't necessarily actively market ourselves with the battery. It is still the predominant reason why people work with us or contact us. And it is a very topical. It's becoming more topical every month, with many countries rolling out battery electrification programs and support for battery manufacturing, and people are waking up to how batteries are really the core piece of technology for any electrification, apart from obviously say a motor and say a solar cell or a wind farm. And a lot of those technologies have been developed a long way, and batteries really do have an opportunity they tend to be the link that slows things down. The other space that's really interesting is we're finding our battery has got a lot of attraction to swapping out diesel engines. Our performance metrics that we're seeing, especially the high capacity discharge and charging, are really those really high charging rates, sometimes 60, 70 times faster than a lithium battery. You've got the ability there to capture people's minds around how you could actually swap out a very large diesel battery. And so you're talking about the marine space or potential rail space and definitely large construction equipment. And whereas the lithium batteries don't tend to talk to those spaces, those applications. So we tend to attract that type of application, which is interesting because there's very few, if nothing, where there's no other battery opportunity at this point that could be in that. So we in some cases we have got big companies where they're really just talking to us because they're just waiting for our battery to come, which is a bit of a I have to say it's a bit of a responsibility focus on not just GMG's business being successful but also their business. You can feel that sometimes when you're in those discussions when they go, well, the only reason my business will succeed now is because if you produce your battery on time the way I need it. And that's definitely been said. Because people have said, I want to be in this batterification space, and then they go to the existing tech and it can't do what they want. It's inevitably around the fast charging space, and they can't get there. And so they'll keep searching. They'll find our type of battery, and they'll come talk to us and say, right, when are you ready? So we're still getting that can come through so often, and it's all roughly in the same space I was just talking about. So, we aren't outbounding. Inbounding still, very good response on a range of different ways that people come to our website and come talk to us, and just through contacts we know as well. Just another point that most customers, I reckon we could sell them a battery, Thermal XR, and our G lubricant once they're all ready. Of course, our battery's not ready yet, but that's another thing. So you have this opportunity to try to save people's energy costs, electrical and fuel, with those two, Thermal XR and G lubricant, and then you can say, right, okay, what other things could we talk to you around a battery? So we're becoming a bit of a one-stop shop. You can talk to people, big companies, that in a way which is more comprehensive than say just saying, look, how about we work with you on this battery? So I hope that helps you explain where we're at.
I think so. And I think the most important question then is if it sounds like even getting pressure from potential customers, when could this battery be ready? How much more work needs to be done here?
Yeah, so what we've been doing, and we announced at the end of last year that next phase is around picking partners to help co-develop the battery for them in the pouch cell. We're still doing a lot of testing in coin cells. That's still happening. Pouch cells has been growing in its focus in our battery development center. We're trying to pick these strategic co-developers in this battery space, and we're really trying to get them spread across a number of high comparative advantage battery applications. So that way we get as many different opportunities progress with a small number of customer opportunities, potential customer opportunities as possible. And what we're then going to do is develop our battery roadmap, which will enable us to say when we're going to get to what, in our eyes, a plan of where our pouch cells should be able to be manufactured and sold at scale, and potentially also our coin cells. Now, that is still in current development. We're doing single layer pouch cells now with reasonable repeatability and with good transfer of the battery technology from coin cells. So we've kind of gone through this phase of getting it up and running the pouch cells. And what we need to now do is say, what battery market are we going to be aiming for? Who are we going to work with in that battery market to see that we can test with them and grow that knowledge around that application? Because each battery application can be quite different in terms of how you design the battery. And then as that progresses, then communicate to our shareholders and potential investors around those next steps. So that's all happening as we speak. Those conversations with potential battery partners are happening as we speak. Our battery roadmap is happening as we speak, is being developed and reviewed and as we speak as well. So there's a lot of data that was developed out of last year's coin cells and pouch cells. Now we put all that into effectively a strategy, and then we plan to then say how we're going to roll that out, and that's what we aim to do in the coming months on how that can be communicated to shareholders.
So, Craig, it sounds like a lot comes to who you guys partner with when it comes to the battery technology, especially in the pouch packs. How many possible companies could you partner with? What's reasonable to expect here?
So some other competitors in this space, although there's so much battery potential customers out there that it's hard to see them as competitors, but they are, because there's so much opportunity. They might have, so a recent company that brought a battery to market for the first time actually worked with 60 different customers, and they weren't or did not, either one, able to communicate the name of any one of those. And I've talked about this before with you, where most battery buyers do not want to be named because they want to use your tech in a stealth, kind of non-relatable or understandable way, so that other people can go and get that same tech and put it in their batteries, their competing products. So we won't be doing 60. That's too much for us now. We might eventually get there, but I don't think that number will be for some time. So right now we're thinking of more like 5 to 10, and they'll be across very broad range applications. And so the idea would be very different applications, and that they'd be quite a world leader in what they do, so that we get the best knowledge we can to make sure our battery is developed in a way that is going to sit with them and work with us. So hopefully that helps you. 5 to 10 I'd be happy with, and they're companies that need batteries, committed to working with us and want to see that change, and we're willing to adapt their own products to use the full advantage of our product, because that's something that you could just use our battery in a normal way, swap it out. That's potential for that to be happening. But, the issue is that you don't get the full advantage of it. So we really want to work with companies that are willing to look at the full advantage of it. And that's a smaller subset who want to be the leaders in this space. And we want to work with people who have got the applications where our battery is going to give the comparative advantage. Like I said, diesel engines is a good example of that.
Okay. A couple more battery questions. And again, everybody keep sending me your questions, please. This one deals more with some of the data out behind the batteries. You haven't released any volumetric energy density of these batteries. Can you explain why this is important? Because I've gotten a couple questions on it, and if you could be releasing this anytime soon.
Yeah, this is a really good question. And volumetric energy density is really important for vehicles. You sell to them on how much space your battery is going to take. It's not really a weight issue for cars, which is funny because most people talk about how many kilowatt hours you have per kilogram on a battery, but actually your vehicles really want to buy on volume. So they want to buy that you have a battery per litre on how much amount of battery storage or kilowatt hours per litre. So that's a bit of an interesting point. They get talked about how they do it in per kilogram, but they're actually per litre. We've been talking about per kilogram because we can calculate that off the amount of weight that we have in our battery, and then there are specific industry calculations you can use to say what that means as an industry expectation for that in a battery, from coin cell to pouch. But when you go to volumetric, it's a lot more specific, and you need to be very clear on your final design and the thickness of all the different parts of the battery before you can say it's volumetric energy density. So we need to finalize those different parts of those pouch cell battery designs before we can come out and say what that volumetric energy density is. And that's what we're literally working through. What materials, what's the thickness of it? What's the thickness of the anode? What's the best thickness of the cathode? What's the best thickness of the cathode substrate? What's the thickness of the separator? And then how much electrolyte do we put into that? And there are literally billions of different combinations. And we're working through that to get to the right combination so it is the right thing for the right application. And ideally, you could see slightly different variances and you can have a different battery for different applications. And that's what we're working on.
All right, Craig, we still have a lot of other battery questions to get to, but this interview is running a little bit long, so I'm going to save those for our next call. One final, more general question to get to involves if the company is going to uplist in the U.S. Any thoughts, any forecasts on if the company is going to move up in exchanges?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And at the right time, I think it'll be almost like a no-brainer. And, we've certainly had contact with different exchanges. I think, that the most natural next is likely an American exchange. And that would be, something that we would organize and coordinate in time and make sure it's in the right sequence of steps. There are a number of things that come together. The American government introduced its Inflation Reduction Act, and IRA, and that has really set the benchmark for government engagement right across the world. And if you make a graphene and then make a battery pack for vehicles in America, we'd be looking at something like $45 a kilowatt hour tax credit, it's probably the expected margin for a battery producer times about 2 to 3 times though. So it's an amazing development. It's uncapped to, for at least next 8 years or so until it starts to come down, expecting somewhere between 600 billion or so or more of potential benefits to be paid to the battery manufacturing industry. So there's that, as well as the sheer fact of that is where we have a large amount of interest from large potential customers across all of our products, as well as, there's really good interest, I think, from a support base that, we really do appreciate both in North America, in the States. So that's, we think, likely a place where where we would go next. But it's just around timing and the right sequence of events is, really what we're thinking through.
Okay. Craig, thank you for addressing these questions. And again, everybody, please keep sending me your questions. I will follow up with Craig for any other news that happens within this month, but in another month time, we will address more questions that keep coming in. In full disclosure, I am a shareholder of GMG. Craig, thank you very much for your time. We'll chat again soon.
Thanks, Cory.